The first time he slid in it was awkward, off-angle too fast, too unsure. His breath caught. Mine did too. I grabbed his wrist, gently steadied him. He froze, trembled eyes wide like he thought he'd ruined everything. I'm sorry, he started, voice cracking. I didn't let go. I didn't even blink. It's okay, I whispered, guiding him again. Just slower. He adjusted carefully this time. Deep, deliberate. My back arched against the edge of the guest bed as I tried not to cry out. His hands gripped the mattress beside me, knuckles pale with restraint. He moved like he was learning me, like he'd studied this in his head for far too long, but never expected to be allowed to live it. And when he trembled again, I pulled him in closer because I couldn't pretend I didn't want him anymore. Not after what we'd crossed to get here. I never imagined I'd cross this line. I'm 43, divorced 6 years. I live alone except for my dog and the spare bedroom my best friend's son crashes in while finishing grad school. He's 24. I used to hold him when he was a toddler, throwing tantrums in the hallway. I taught him how to tie a tie before prom. I watched him cry when his dad left, and I sat beside his mom, my closest friend, as she pieced herself back together. So, no, I never thought I'd be on my back legs wrapped around him, whispering his name, like it was something I shouldn't be allowed to say out loud. What would you do if your best friend's son reached for you one night, gently, nervously, and kissed you with hands that shook from trying too hard to be careful? What would you do if he got it wrong the first time and begged without words for a chance to do better? Would you let him try again? I did, and nothing's been the same since, because it wasn't just about the way he felt. It wasn't just the way his mouth moved down my neck or the way he buried his face in my shoulder after. It was the way he looked at me, like I wasn't someone's mother, someone's best friend, someone too old, too off limits. He looked at me like a woman who deserved to be wanted. Even now, hours later, I'm still shaking, because there's no going back. Before we begin, take a moment to like and subscribe. Try to watch the video for as long as possible. By watching the content more frequently, YouTube will recommend these stories to a wider audience, which will help the channel grow and provide you with more content to enjoy. Let's get started right away. It started long before that night, long before either of us admitted anything. The first time I really noticed him again, not as a kid, I used to babysit, not as my best friend's son, but as something else was in late spring. He'd just moved back from campus saying the city wore him out. I offered the guest room like it was nothing, told his mother I was happy to help until he found a place. He brought his things in himself. Quiet, thankful, polite. Don't worry, he said that first night, dragging his duffel down the hallway. I won't be in your way. I smiled. You've never been trouble, Liam. But something in his face flickered, like maybe he wanted to be. I brushed it off. At first. The truth is, I'd gotten used to being invisible. After my divorce, people stopped asking about me. My friends got busy. My ex remarried. My kids visited when they could. But the house had grown too quiet. Too neat. Too not lived in. Having Liam here brought noise back. His shoes in the hallway. His deep laugh echoing from the living room. Late-night cereal bowls in the sink. For weeks, that's all it was, just a quiet welcome presence in a home that had felt like a museum for too long. But he noticed things, more than most. You always cook too much, he said one evening. I shrugged. Old habit. I used to cook for 4. He didn't say anything, just brought his plate to the sink, then gently took mine from my hands and started rinsing it. Another night I mentioned I hadn't slept well. You always leave the porch light on, he said. Maybe you should turn it off. It messes with your circadian rhythm. I stared at him. You sound like your mum. He gave a half smile. She says I sound like you. That one landed somewhere I didn't expect. Things shifted gradually after that. I'd find him in the kitchen waiting for the coffee to finish shirtless, barefoot, rubbing his eyes. I told myself not to look. but I always did. He'd linger when I talked, watch me too closely when I laughed. If he touched my arm in passing, it would stay with me for hours after. Still, I didn't let myself go there. Until one night late June, he came home later than usual, clearly frustrated. I was still up folding laundry at the dining table. Everything okay? He dropped into the chair across from me, rubbing the back of his neck. Got offered a job, turned it down. Why didn't want to leave yet? I set the towel down. Liam, don't stay here for me, I'm not, he said, voice low. But I don't want to go yet, either. I felt that. Sharp deep. Too intimate. He stood stretched. You look tired, he added, like he was trying to step back into safer territory. You should go to bed. I nodded, but I didn't move. And neither did he. It wasn't anything he said. Not really. It was the way he waited just long enough to make me feel seen. I went to bed that night, clutching a pillow against my chest, heart pounding like I'd run a mile. The guilt started before anything even happened. That's how I knew this wasn't just some curiosity or a crush I could ignore. I found myself second-guessing every outfit, avoiding eye contact when he walked in, shirtless, timing my showers to not overlap with his. But it was no use, because he kept noticing me, and I kept needing to be noticed. It's a dangerous thing to be seen after you've been invisible too long. You start to crave it. You start to depend on it, even when you know it's the worst possible thing. Especially then. The final shift came quietly. We were both watching something on the couch, some dumb show we weren't really following. My legs were tucked up. His were stretched out. During a commercial, I turned to ask something, and he was already looking at me. Our faces were too close. Neither of us moved. His eyes dropped to my mouth, and just like that, something fragile and old and forbidden cracked between us. But still we didn't touch. Not then. I went to bed and cried quietly under the pillow, because I knew this wasn't going away. After that night on the couch, everything changed, but nothing was said. We started keeping space between us, like it was holy. No brushing arms in the kitchen, no sitting side by side on the couch. But the absence made it worse. Every silence felt loaded. Every shared room hummed with something we weren't saying. And he knew it. I knew it. I remember one morning I'd just gotten out of the shower towel, wrapped high. I stepped out of the bathroom, and he was standing in the hallway, barefoot, sipping coffee. We froze. His eyes dropped just for a second before he looked away, fast, cheeks red. Sorry, he mumbled. But he didn't leave. He just stood there like he wanted to say something and couldn't. I tightened the towel and walked past him, but I felt the weight of his stare all the way back to my room, and I didn't hate it. Later that week, I caught myself applying lip balm 3 times before dinner. Not lipstick, just something faint subtle. I wiped it off twice, put it back on. He noticed. Of course he did. Your lips look different tonight, he said, as I handed him a bowl of roasted potatoes. I blinked. Do they? He nodded slowly, looking at me longer than he should have. Yeah. We didn't speak again for the rest of dinner. The next night it was worse. We both reached for the same dish towel. My hand landed over his, warm, steady. I should have pulled away. He should have too. But neither of us moved. When I finally looked up, he was already watching me, something unreadable on his face. His thumb brushed the side of my finger, light tentative. I inhaled sharply and took the towel. Good night, I said too quickly. Night, he said almost in a whisper. I didn't sleep. I laid there, eyes open, remembering how warm his hand had felt, how natural it had been, like we'd done it 100 times before. The boundary was gone. Not crossed yet, but gone. And that was almost worse. The next afternoon I was outside trimming the hedges when I twisted wrong and pulled something in my lower back. I cursed, dropped the shears, and tried to stretch it out. Liam came out seconds later. You okay? He asked, jogging over. Just my back. I winced, I twisted too fast. "Here, sit down." He guided me to the porch bench and knelt in front of me, pressing a hand gently to my lower back. I flinched, but not from pain. His hands were warm, strong, gentle, in a way that made my breath catch. "Here," he asked. I nodded. He started rubbing light circles, careful pressure. Not inappropriate. Not yet. But every pass of his palm made my spine thrum. I leaned back slightly. My shirt had ridden up, and his hand touched skin, bare skin. He didn't pull away. I felt his fingers pause, then continue slower. When I looked down at him, he looked up at me, and there it was, undeniable. Want. The kind that had been living between us for weeks, maybe longer. "Liam," I whispered. He stood slowly. Close. Too close. "You keep looking at me like I'm not supposed to notice," he said, voice low. "But I do." I didn't answer, because there wasn't anything left to say. That night we sat on opposite ends of the couch. I kept the TV on. Noise distraction. But every time I shifted, I felt him watching. When I stood to go upstairs, he followed. We both knew. I reached the hallway and paused at the foot of the stairs. He stopped behind me, not touching, not speaking, just breathing, heavy, uneven. I can't. I started, but I didn't finish. Because he was behind me now, and I could feel the warmth of him even without contact. I turned slowly, and our faces nearly brushed. Neither of us moved. Our breath mingled. His chest rose too fast. My hands were shaking. His eyes flicked to my mouth again. I closed mine, but I didn't move. And that said everything. The air between us was hot, still, unbearably quiet. I should have turned and walked up the stairs, should have left him standing there, but I didn't. I waited, and when he leaned in, slow, hesitant, his breath ghosting against my cheek, I didn't stop him. His lips met mine like a question. Soft, barely there, but I answered anyway. I leaned into it, pressed back. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was trembling. His hands came to my hips uncertain, as if asking permission even now. I closed my eyes and let my body speak what I couldn't. He kissed me deeper, slower, until my knees nearly gave out, and I gripped his shirt to stay upright. Somewhere between the hallway and my bedroom, my breath caught in my throat. I heard myself whisper his name, ragged, broken, like it was something forbidden. Because it was. He hesitated at the door. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice shaking. I looked up at him. This boy I'd known since he was little, now a man who knew exactly what he was asking. I could see the fear in his eyes. Not of hurting me, of crossing a line he couldn't return from. I should have said no. I said yes with my body instead. Inside the room I guided him. My fingers curled into his back as he leaned over me, uncertain but reverent. The way he moved, careful, slow, a little off, at first told me this wasn't a game to him. This wasn't something he'd done 100 times. His breath stuttered when he first moved inside, too fast, too deep. He froze. He started panicked, but I pressed my hand to the back of his neck and whispered, "It's okay. Try again." He pulled back slightly, adjusted, and tried again, slower this time, steadier. The air left my lungs in a broken sigh. His skin was warm against mine, every shift of his body coaxing something out of me I hadn't felt in years. Not lust, not even love, but something heavier. Need to be wanted, touched, seen. He buried his face into the side of my neck, like he couldn't believe this was real, like he didn't want me to see his face while he trembled. And I let him. I held him there, his weight pressed into me, our breaths falling out of sync, because the silence between our bodies said more than either of us could manage. The sound of him whispering my name against my skin undid me. The hesitation in his rhythm, the way his fingers clenched the sheets like he needed something to anchor him, the way he slowed down, then slowed down again like he didn't want to rush through it. It didn't feel like a mistake in that moment. It felt like something we'd been walking toward for years, even as the guilt burned behind my ribs, even as I knew deep down this would never leave us. When it was over, he stayed close, didn't speak, just laid there beside me, one hand still lightly resting on my hip, like he didn't know if he was allowed to hold on. I turned to look at him. His eyes were closed, but his brow was tight. Worried. "I didn't plan this," he said. Finally, voice hoarse. "I swear I didn't." "I know," I whispered. He looked at me. "I've wanted to touch you since before I even knew what it meant. That sounds awful, I know, but I mean it." I didn't have words. Because somewhere in the part of me I'd spent years keeping shut, I'd wanted to be touched. Not by anyone. By him. That scared me more than anything. I reached up, brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "We can't undo it," I said. He didn't argue. He just lay there, breathing hard, eyes wide, like he was still catching up to what had happened. I could still feel him everywhere, his weight, his warmth, the way he shook. And I knew the second he walked out of that room, nothing would ever be the same. Not in my life, not in his, not in the silence we'd have to carry now. The door barely made a sound when he left the room. Early morning before light, before noise, I heard the soft thud of his footsteps down the stairs, the creak of the front door, the faint click as it shut behind him. And then I was alone. Sheets still warm where he'd been, my robe hanging loose around my shoulders, the air in the room thick heavy with what we'd done. I sat up slowly, every muscle aching, not from the act itself, but from the weight of what it meant. I thought it would feel like a dream, something I could shake off in the shower, but it followed me, into the bathroom, into the kitchen, onto my skin. I made coffee, poured 2 mugs out of habit. When I realized he wasn't coming back anytime soon, I dumped one down the sink. I didn't see him until late that afternoon. I was wiping down the counter when he walked in, hoodie pulled low, hands in his pockets. He didn't look at me right away. "Hi," he said, quiet. "Hi." He hovered near the fridge, didn't move to open it. "About last night," we both said at the same time. He let out a nervous laugh. I didn't. I couldn't. He rubbed his hand down his face. "I don't regret it," he said. "I can't." I shook my head, not in disagreement, just not knowing what else to do. "I do," I said. "And I don't, which might be worse." He took a step closer, then stopped himself. "I keep seeing your face," he said, voice breaking. "The way you looked at me right before. It wasn't wrong. It didn't feel wrong. That's the part that scares me." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "You think she'd hate us?" He meant his mom, my best friend. I didn't answer. Because I already knew. The rest of the day passed in fragments. I couldn't focus on anything. Not laundry, not emails, not dinner prep. I caught myself standing at the sink, staring out the window, holding a dirty dish, like I forgot what it was for. I knew I should have told him to leave. That night, the next day. But I didn't. Because sending him away felt like saying I was done needing him, and I wasn't. That night we didn't speak. He stayed in his room. I stayed in mine. But around midnight I heard his door creak open, then close again, soft footsteps down the hallway, then nothing. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't call to him. But my hand stayed curled in the blankets, gripping hard, like holding back what I wanted, took every ounce of strength. The next few days bled together. He stayed out more. I stayed busy. We passed each other in the hall, with polite nods, quiet hellos, like we hadn't undone each other in my bed less than a week before. But every glance burned, every silence stretched. Until one night I found him in the laundry room, leaning against the dryer arms, crossed eyes unreadable. "I'm going crazy," he said. I didn't answer. I thought maybe if we just acted normal, it would fade. And has it? I asked. He laughed once. Bitter. Not even close. I took a breath. We can't keep doing this. Someone's going to find out. His face dropped. Is that all you're worried about? No, I whispered. I'm worried I'll stop caring who finds out. He stepped forward, then stopped. Tell me what you want, and I'll go. I'll leave. Right now. I looked at him, at this man who was too young, too familiar, too off limits, and I wanted to say it, but I couldn't, because if I said it, it became real. So I turned away. He left the room without another word, and the silence that followed felt like punishment. It was 2 weeks later when my best friend showed up unannounced. I hadn't even had time to sweep the entryway. I opened the door, and she hugged me like nothing had changed, like I wasn't holding on to a secret that could destroy both of us. He hasn't called me in days, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Just texted that he's been busy. You know how he gets. I nodded carefully, afraid of what might come next. She dropped her purse on the kitchen table, like she used to before she remarried, and moved 3 hours away. I thought maybe he was depressed again. Or, I don't know. Is everything okay here? I glanced down the hallway toward his room. The door was closed, light peeking out underneath. He's fine, I said softly. Just figuring things out. Her eyes narrowed. You sure I swallowed? Positive. We made small talk over tea. She told me about her new job, her stepson, the renovations she regretted starting. I laughed at all the right moments, but my insides twisted with every word. She looked around the house at the couch, the kitchen, the hallway. This place hasn't changed a bit, she said. I wanted to say neither have I, but that wasn't true anymore. That night after she left, I knocked on Liam's door. He didn't answer. I turned the knob, found him lying on his back staring at the ceiling. She came by, I said. He didn't look at me. I heard. She misses you. I know. I walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. He stayed still. I lied to her, I said quietly. Not with words, just with everything else. His eyes met mine. Red-rimmed, tired. I don't want you to lie anymore, he said. Not for me. You want me to tell her? No, he said, sitting up. I want you to let me go. My breath hitched. What I need to move out, he said. Get my own place. Figure out what the hell I'm doing. I blinked. You think that'll make it easier? He smiled, but there was no joy in it. It'll make it possible. We sat in silence. I wanted to scream, to beg, to ask him to stay just until I could breathe again without needing to see him first. But I didn't, because he was right. And this wasn't love. Not really. It was something else deeper, in some ways more destructive in others. I won't stop thinking about you, he said. I know. He reached out, touched my hand gently. This doesn't go away, does it? No, I said. But maybe we learn to live around it. The next morning he was gone before I woke up, just like the first time. Only this time it was permanent. I stood in the doorway of the guest room, sheet-stripped closet empty. It looked like he'd never been there, but I could still feel him in the space, in the silence, in every inch of the air I breathed. My best friend never suspected, or if she did, she never said. We still talk. Less than before, but enough to pretend nothing cracked between us. Liam never called, never wrote. I kept his name out of my mouth, but not out of my head. Sometimes I stand at the sink and think about his breath against my neck, his hands shaking as I guided him again. The way I didn't stop him, not because I was weak, but because I wanted it more than I could admit. I crossed a line I can't uncross, but for one night, I felt like a woman again.